about job search and AI. Um, if you can do me a favor to begin with, and that is just to check in on the QR code. This will give me a proper head count of how many students registered and how many showed up. And this will allow me to plan future events of this kind, especially with our guest speaker today. Want to make sure that we give them the proper attention. So I'll start in about a minute as I'm still letting in individuals as they're rolling in. I know there's an event going outside on campus, so I'm pretty sure they're coming in from it. So, um, great. So yeah, okay. Got a couple more. Awesome. So if you just joined us again, welcome to AI Career Series Recruiter Insights with Mike Petito. And this is in regards to the job search. Maybe we can touch upon a little bit about the intern as well, internship process. I know when you registered initially with the Zoom link, I asked for you to have a question. So we can ask those questions later on in the event. Um, so for the meantime, can you just please register check in through the QR code. And I'm just gonna get started. So don't feel like you've missed out on anything. Um, so yeah, the agenda for today is we're gonna get through the introductions and welcoming about the event. We'll have an icebreaker and engagement activity that Mike has for y'all. So please be prepared to be engaged. This is an opportunity for you to get his insight as a recruiter and his background in this. And then we'll have a couple of moderated discussion on questions on AI that I'll be asking Mike to help give some context in terms of what is AI doing in the job search, right? How can you better prepare? And then from there, hopefully for the last 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, whatever time we have, I will open it up to the audience. So I hope that all of you or most of you are brave enough to come on camera, unmute yourselves, and ask questions that you might have for Mike, whether it be the question that you had on the form that you submitted to me, or if your question gets answered beforehand, maybe you have a new question, right? Feel free to get this insight that we're here today and that we have an expert on this topic. Again, if you just joined us, please use the QR code here that says check in so I can get a proper head count for future events. Um, Sound good? Can I get some thumbs up in the chat if you can see this, if you can hear me, if that was clear? Just give me some sign of life out there. Awesome, thank you. Great. So for today, the presenters, my name is Julio Rodriguez. I'm a USC Career Advisor here at the Career Center. Thank you for being here again, registering. I think I had about 170 students register, so hopefully we got a couple more. But today we have a special guest here. His name is Mike Pedito. He is the Director of Talent at Teal, and I will pass that on to him now so he can introduce himself, get a little bit of a background, and feel free to scan that QR code so you can connect with Mike and see all his great content that he has that I picked up on. So without further ado, Mike.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm glad everyone's here. I'm excited to be here. Quick intro, and then obviously we'll talk through if we hear a lot of questions and talk through whatever. I am someone who's been in a recruiting and hiring space for a long time at this point. I don't need to date myself to the number of years, but it has been a long time. And um, if you've never seen or heard of me before, which is likely because I don't think college students seek me out, I'm someone who, oh, someone see me on Instagram, amazing. I'm someone who a couple years ago, after a round of layoffs myself, decided to take to the internet to kind of talk about job searching as someone in this space, talk about what the market was like and how people could do better. And it took off for me. And during this whole time, I've maintained a full-time role in what I do because I want to stay up to date. I think a lot of advice out there is a little outdated. And continue to sort of bring that information to people and to job seekers and college students while working on the corporate end to try and make hiring better at companies as well. So that's where I am. When it comes to questions you want to ask, things you want to talk about, my reputation, what I sort of do, uh, I will tell you the truth. I have nothing to sell here. I have no alternate agenda. And I think sometimes that is where a lot of this information advice you hear comes from. It's amazing that Julio set up an event like this, and obviously he's kind of tuned in for, he's found me, and I think kind of seen some of my content as well. Um, but I think at college especially, despite I think despite good intentions, a lot of information that goes around college campuses tends to be a little bit outdated and incorrect. A lot of times coming from people who haven't really been in the space in a long time, and haven't kind of worked in the corporate world. They've been in education, and that's great. But things change very quickly in the professional world. So I really try and stay up to date with college students as well to kind of help them understand here's what's actually happening out there. So whatever you've heard, true, not true, there's no stupid questions when we talk through stuff. I really like to make this stuff as accessible and give you some action-oriented advice around it as I can. So that's me, and that's who I am. And there's a picture of me drawing my own curly hair and beard and glasses on a chalkboard.
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you for that. So as Mike said it, right? Even myself as a career advisor, I have to stay up to date with things as times are changing. I remember when I interacted with a career advisor for the first time when I was in undergrad. I felt like I was more confused than anything. So I hope that my team has provided you with great insight, but we're always learning, right? So this is the beauty of this. So Mike will hopefully give us some of those gems that we can take away today, including myself and for everybody else. So I think Mike has an activity for us next, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, just something fun to try to break a little bit of ice before we get into some questions. We can type, we can yell out answers. Obviously, there's a lot of people in here, so that might get a little tough, but we'll see how it goes. Um, just curious to see people's thoughts, sort of, because one thing I'll tell you from the start, there is no perfect answer or advice. You're going to hear me say that a lot of times. But I want to pull up one of my favorite resumes here, and I think it could be fun to roast it a little bit. Curious to hear from people what they think, red flags, things they change, stuff they've heard. So I'm going to share this picture here. Um, and then I want you all to be as tough as possible. What do we hate? What do we change? We'll just kind of get the juices flowing a little bit there with that. That was a gross phrase. I'm sorry. Can you see this picture now? Cool. All right, I can still see chat. Cool. Let's hear it. Let's talk about this resume. What do you see on this right away that you're just like, am I supposed to do this? Or this is terrible? Or what are your thoughts when you see this? Can't
I
read the
think,
name.
yeah, I was gonna say, some people kind of mentioned already. It's the picture. I don't know if that's the best thing to do, just because we do live in a world where people have unconscious bias. And so I don't know if that's, you know, something to put on.
Yeah, great insight on that. It's funny because someone else even said love the portrait as we get in here. And that's sort of the funny thing, right? That goes back to what I was even talking about. So a lot of people seem to kind of hate the picture. I'm seeing poor use of space. Can't read the name. Um, what do we think about poor use of space? Lots of space dedicated just to contact information and skills, for sure. Anyone can jump in. See a hand raised. Do we need to let people speak, or can they just like unmute and talk?
Yeah, so feel free to unmute and talk.
Okay, I wasn't
Your
sure.
thoughts. Yeah.
I know a lot of people may not jump in and talk. Yeah, Sean, I see you raising your hand. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, thanks. Just high level, it seems like almost like 75% or a majority of the space is dedicated to the name, the photo, and then like this contact information skills summary so that when you actually get to the meat and potatoes, it's just a really, really small font, super condensed, hard to read. It just seems like the actual point of it all is so condensed into just like shoot off into the corner.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a great call out there. One of the terms I often use when I talk about resume is sort of like a poor use of space and kind of a time to value as you look at things. One thing I'd say about this resume is its time to value is very high. It takes me a long time to kind of figure out exactly what I would need to talk to this person for and what they're the best at. Um, we've seen a lot of comments about the skill section. Um, the yellow dots and doesn't add much. This is something actually that I will tell you. There's only like a few pieces of resume advice where I'm just like, please listen to me on this one. And this absolutely is one. Rating the skill section, right? There's nothing inherently wrong. It's not necessarily going to cost you a job. It's one of those things that like some people may hate or whatever. But like Tara said here, it's not clear what the gold circles are for. Um, yeah, I don't know what that means, right? A 2 out of 4, a 3 out of 4, like according to who, and at what, especially when you kind of see something just sort of like apps or, data entry. Is a 3 out of 4 good? Is it bad? It's a 75%. It's a C. And then if you're going to rate yourself a 4 out of 4, are you really claiming that like you can't improve at it? It's almost this lose-lose scenario that you're better off letting whoever you're speaking to kind of determine where they would rate your skills based on what they need. So it's just one of those things that always bugs me when I see it. I won't skip a resume because of it, but it's just like it's eating up that space again. So we had a lot of talk about the headshots. I'm seeing some stuff about no results, bullets with XYZ. And we can sort of talk about the XYZ formula if we need as we kind of go. But for sure, whether you think a bullet point needs to include anything or what, when you read these bullet points for sure, right? Setting appointments, team management, that means nothing. Right? When a resume is just a job description, it really doesn't kind of help anyone at all. Um, and yeah, I think to me the biggest thing is the space. And this is something that when you hear me talk about a use of space or hear people talk about a lot of space, because of the picture, because of the way this is with multiple columns and all these things, um, what you wind up losing is the ability to write a good bullet point, right? We're being condensed, we're losing half the page before we can even start. So when you hear people talk about like boring resumes being better, this is ultimately the reason why, because it's just sort of like pointless bullet points. Even going down to education, right? This is somebody who's been working for 10 years, and there's more information about like their student activities at their school they graduated in 2010 than there is about some of their jobs. It isn't highlighting the stuff that really needs to, right? And kind of trimming back. I saw someone say in here, I'm gonna scroll up. Let me find it here. Not ATS approved. I do want to caution on that. I don't know how much time we're gonna have to get into ATS talk today or whatever else, of course. ATS formatting, ATS approved, it doesn't really mean as much as you think it does. A resume like this, honestly, if this came into my ATS, I'd probably be able to see it just fine. It really isn't as scary of an idea as people think. People have been talking and worrying about something like that for a decade now. And these systems at this point, like when it comes in, it's just a PDF or a Word file that I see. Um, so don't be too scared of your format not passing some type of system. Be more scared of your format costing you the ability to write a good bullet point, really show off your work, and taking a long time for a recruiter to find the value in it. Um, Anything else just jump out? Anyone like this? Anything people really think is good on here? It's okay if you do. The color. Yeah, I think a little pop of color can work. Right, I think my resume has a little color on the top of it. It's similar in the way that like the name is like in a block in color, but not huge, not written in script font. But I do add a little kind of pop of color. I think that can be okay. Those are one of those things that like people debate that really doesn't matter that much. Um, the headlines, the job title, and role are separated. Good. Yeah. I mean, the sections are there. They're certainly clear, right? It's just like this is a resume. The other thing I want to point out on here is again, I don't know how much time we're going to get into like everything, but like one thing I always try and like caution people because a lot of advice I give tries to be in response to what I think a lot of people hear on the job market. Um, and I'll tell you one thing on here that I really don't love that I think no one in here even really said anything about because you've probably been told it's good is this summary at the top of the resume. There's nothing wrong with the summary. I'm not going to tell people not to do a summary, But something I always tell people is if I can take your summary and copy and paste it onto any other applicant's resume for this job and it wouldn't change anything, then it's really not a good summary, right? Dedicated, results-driven professional, 10 years experience in project management, track record of completing projects on time with budget, maintain high standards of quality, team leadership, risk manager. That's literally every project manager on the planet. Seeking a challenging position, utilize skills. So like that literally could explain or describe everyone who applied to this job. Right? If you're going to use this summary, make it about you. Tell me about a project you did, something good that sort of separates you from other people. So when we talk about sort of like wasted space again, I don't even read that paragraph because I can tell 5 words into it, there's not going to be anything of value about this candidate in that paragraph. So again, we keep talking about time to value. How quick can a recruiter find what they need to see? We're wasting that time a lot. So cool. I just thought it'd be fun to watch people sort of like take a resume that I knew most of you would have a problem with. I didn't want to get one of these ones where we can really debate what's good or not. Um, but I know we're not really here today to talk just specifically about resumes, but maybe you've heard some things just in this that are going to raise some questions for you. So I'm going to stop sharing this here, and we can kind of get into a lot of this other stuff we wanted to talk about today. But I appreciate the interaction from everyone on that too. That could have just been me talking for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you to us, so for being engaged, and you'll have to be engaged in a couple more minutes asking these questions, right? So if you have anything that's already in your mind, hopefully you can share with it so we can have this conversation be as fruitful as possible. Because I just learned something today too, right now. So the more we know, the better. And I'm pretty sure a lot of individuals that were interested in the shop were my master program students. So I don't know, either you're about to graduate, right? You're probably looking for a job. So for that population, this is going to be a good time for you to understand how you can better position yourself when you're applying to jobs and whatnot, right? So hopefully we can continue to learn today. But as Mike mentioned, today we're going to ask a little bit more about how has AI played a role in recruitment, right? I'll picking his brain to see what does he see, what does he see in the future, and how can you better prepare for it now, right? So, my first question for you, Mike, I'm gonna put it in the chat just because I don't want to, this is a little bit long. So, the question is, has AI made recruitment more effective for both employers and the applicant, or has it made it easier for recruiters and more difficult for the applicants?
It's a really good question. I would say to this, it has made things, um, it has made the easy things easier to do and quicker. Um, but it hasn't had the effect people think on recruitment. For a job seeker, and we'll take both sides of this. I'll tell you some good and some bad things. And it's something I like to talk about a lot. As a job seeker, there are a ton of options out there now and ways to use AI to help you. Right, I work for a company that does that. So obviously, I can never sit here and say like, don't use AI. I'm very pro AI in the job search for candidates to begin with. My biggest concern, the biggest thing I talk to candidates about, is most of them don't use AI well. Right, AI is still new. A lot of people are still figuring out how to do it, and um, that summary, for example, on that resume we looked at, a lot of people would get that summary. That summary read like it was written by ChatGPT, right? And it can apply to anybody. And you paste it on there and it does nothing for you. So if you're using it and it's not helping you in any way, then it's not making good use of it. I get people who apply to roles at Teal all the time and very clearly use AI to answer some of the questions on the application. And again, I don't necessarily hate that you're doing that. But if you're not taking the time to make it more about you, make it clear that adding something to it, what happens is I look through 30 resumes and 25 of them literally all have the same answer to these questions, and it blends in. You have to kind of think about if everybody's doing this, how am I trying to stand out? The other thing I think people are not helping themselves with when it comes to AI is these AI kind of mass supply tools. There are a lot of them on the market, and they are making a lot of money by telling people like we'll make job searching easier, we'll just send you out to everyone. And most of the jobs they're sending you to aren't a fit. The resumes they're putting together for you without you having eyes on them aren't good. And I can tell, right? Because again, they all come in at the same time at like 2:30 a.m. and there's like a batch of 15 resumes that literally are the same exact format, with the same exact thing, and they're not really a fit for the job. And it's just very obvious. And it's a waste of energy and it's a waste of time. And it's probably a waste of money for applicants who are paying for this. Um, and it's a waste of recruiters' time, which a lot of people may not care. I get it. People hate recruiters. I understand. But what it does is it clogs the pipes, right? It makes me spend time sort of going through all these things, when I'm kind of going through, and you see these videos online of people saying, I applied for 1,000 jobs and didn't get any interviews. And it almost becomes this badge of honor. People trying to see like how big of a number they can get. But there was no way they were qualified for those 1,000 jobs. And that's what's happening, is people are sort of losing sight of the real mission, which is to find the right job for you and stand out to get that job. So this is a long-winded answer to say like AI tools can be great, but you have to prompt it more. You have to learn. You have to get it to learn who you are. You need to get it to write unique things about you. It can be a great resource for writing. Some prompts I love giving AI as a job seeker is like take this bullet point and reduce the words by half without losing any of the impact, and watch the way it'll just like take your 3 line overwritten bullet point and cut it down. Or showing it your resume and saying, play the role of a picky hiring manager for this job and show them the job. What issues would you have with my resume? Why would you not interview me? So using it for things like that are great. Just saying, write me a resume for this job, answer questions for this job, it's hurting you. Um, and the same thing for hiring teams, right? Most ATS systems are not using AI the way that people are telling you that it is. I go through, I still see every resume. I can't be tricked by tricks to try to beat AI. That's not really how it works. But I can use AI to just sort of like find like I'm hiring a Java developer. How many of these applicants aren't even Java developers? Okay, cool. Well, they're going to go to the bottom of the list as we look here. How many of them, don't have the required bachelor's degree or whatever it is. So like in that way, it can make me more efficient. But it's not some secret score level you have to hit. Right? It's really kind of these basic ways to get in there. And then it makes me quicker to go through and send out emails, get interviews scheduled, do all the scheduling. So it has helped in those ways, but it's not doing all the things you think it's doing. It's not just making hiring decisions. You're on mute, Julia.
Oops. Sorry, thanks. Any thoughts on what Mike just shared? Experiences that you maybe have experienced? Any frustration? Anybody brave enough to share what he just talked about and maybe in your own experiences? Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you. Sorry, I can shut up after this. Sorry for the double hand raise, but
You're
I've
good.
definitely had a handful of experiences where I've spent a couple hours trying to put together a thoughtful resume cover letter, for a job that either was recommended to me to apply, or that I felt I was qualified for, only to kind of, I'm sure people on this call can relate to getting that kind of instant kickback, and you just get a message from that job board that says you've been rejected for this position when there's just no possible way, for a human to have looked and reviewed that application in that amount of time. So I'm curious if you have identified kind of what is that kind of common roadblock? What is that kind of great filter, that is being put on in instances where AI is being used to make that beginning, middle, and final decision in hiring?
Yeah, so typically when something like that happens, it's because of some type of knockout question, which again is more kind of human caused idea, right? So I may post a job, and on the application, there's a couple questions, right? Do you have a bachelor's degree? And if a bachelor's degree is a hard requirement for this role, I'm not pro bachelor's degree being a hard requirement, but if it is a hard requirement for a role and you answer no to that question, it doesn't check the box as it. Um, then like it's probably just going to kick back and not even show me. I can set it to automatically say like, don't show me people who say no to that. Someone in the comments talk about work authorization. That is a super common knockout question. Will you require some type of visa sponsorship to work in the United States? And a lot of companies don't or cannot sponsor. So if you say yes to that, you might automatically get rejected. That's when those instant ones happen, and it can be as many as a company wants, right? So I can't speak to what every company's doing. Maybe in situations where you're applying, they need 2 years work experience and can see that you don't have the 2 years professional experience or whatever it is. Um, so that's a little bit different, right? Because what most people think is like AI is going through scanning for keywords. If you don't hit a number of keywords, it automatically rejects you. That's really not what's going on. And that question even just came in. No, like that's not what's happening. Now, I have to say, there are hundreds of ATS systems, and every day 10 new ones get invented. Everyone thinks they have the fix for hiring, which is to invent a new ATS system. Um, and I have seen them evolve over the years. So, can it, could there be ones out there really starting to do that? Like, sure, I can't say everything that's happening at every company and everywhere that you go. Um, but what I can say is, in general, no. It's not just like a lack of keywords getting you auto rejected. Um, and the truth is, if it was, and you're getting auto rejected, you probably weren't a fit for that job because it's not because you didn't write team player. Right. If it's happening, it's because I need a Java developer and you didn't mention Java anywhere in your resume, which at some point becomes like your own fault that you're applying to a Java developer without mentioning Java on your resume. It's not the goal oriented or things like that are getting people kicked out.
William, did you want to come off mute?
Yeah, I have a question. I know there's, like you said, there's a trend with now leveraging AI to kind of optimize, job hunting. And now
Mhm.
you're kind of saying that because majority of people are taking that strategy, there's a level of things that are a little homogenous when you reach, that are being sent out. So, from your perspective, what is the better use of AI? Is it not particularly for, tailoring your resume? Is it, I'm curious, what you would say from a
Yeah.
recruiter's perspective.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, to me, it's a good starting spot and a good like editing spot. Maybe even call it like a good starting spot and an end spot. But you have to put in like the work in the middle to kind of make it you, right? So, like I said, I mean, if you were to take a job description and run it through AI and say like, what are the 10 most important parts of this job I need to make sure my resume shows? Cool. Okay, which of those are missing from my resume? Okay, great. Now I'm going to write some bullet points that show how I did do that thing that's really in here. Or your resume has gone over to 2 pages and you want to get it down to one and it's over by a couple of lines. Maybe you take some of those long ones, right? And we say like, help me reduce this without losing the impact. So I think it's a really good thing to sort of like help you know where to start, help you know what may be missing, help you edit and trim or sort of rewrite stuff as you need. But just saying like, write me a resume for this job, write me a cover letter for this job, and not putting the parts on about you, that's where I think people are sort of like skipping that step and it's hurting them.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, I see some questions are starting to roll in. So I'll ask one more about AI, and then we can go into the audience. So please bear with me on the chat. But I'm glad that we're having these interactions, and some of
Mhm.
y'all are brave enough to come off mute. So I encourage others to come off mute so you guys can have this conversation with Mike. As you can see, he doesn't bite. He's friendly, and he tells you how it is. So. I guess we can maybe think about the future and where do you see it in your perspective. So, do you foresee AI continuing to evolve in recruitment, and how should these candidates adapt to these changes?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about this like bigger than recruitment, right? I mean, like AI is continuing to evolve in everything, and it's still brand new to a lot of us. I get a ton of questions like this about AI, and the truth is, like, I don't know. I mean, we were like so early into so much of it, and I'm certainly not building AI tools, so I don't know, what's coming with a lot of it. But I saw a great comparison. If you all have a lot of AI like thoughts and questions, and you don't follow. There's this account on TikTok and Instagram. It's CatGPT. I'll type it in here. Um, if you don't follow ChatGPT. Her name's Catherine. She's like a Stanford master's student. Like she's absolute genius. Um, but she makes videos aimed at like making AI more accessible to people and helping talk through it. I'd say follow her. But she said something recently that really stuck with me. Um, where she said like where we are with AI right now is the equivalent of like where we were with the internet in like 1997. And for most of you, that means nothing. But as someone who was in high school in 1997, when the internet was sort of like just coming out and we were on dial-up internet and trying to figure out how to do it, and teachers didn't know how to stop us from like using our Encyclopedia Carta CD-ROMs and kind of doing these things, and we were in chat rooms on AOL. Right, like that internet seems so old and weird now. So like in 10 years, like is AI going to be a passing fad? I doubt it. Is it going to take over the world? I also doubt it, right? But I do think it is a tool that's really going to matter. So if you're avoiding learning it, if you're avoiding using it and learning to prompt yourself and taking sort of like courses in it, you're missing out because above all else, companies are going to want people who are good with AI. And they're going to want people who understand how to kind of use it. So, how candidates should adapt, I think it's by continuing to know it, right? Being able to show that like it is a tool in your arsenal. One way to do that is to use it well in the job search. When you use it poorly, like in some of the situations I gave earlier, it sort of doesn't make you look great. Zapier is a company that during their application process basically like asks you like do this in AI and show us what you did. Ashby is a ATS system, and then when you apply for jobs there, it asks you, did you use AI in your application? And they say like it's okay if you did. But they say like, what did you do after AI gave you the output? And they want to kind of know like where you came in. So like, learn how to do this stuff is like the best advice I can give right now.
So, yeah. Thoughts on this particular question from anybody in the audience before I start going into the chat? Awesome. Okay. So here on campus, I'm not sure, are you familiar with like AI platforms such as like VMock, Quincy by any chance, Mike?
I am not. I saw someone ask about VMOC. I'm not sure what that is.
So VMock is a resource that we provide students here with. It's a AI-powered resume and career development platform. It's designed to provide instant feedback and personalized recommendations for their document, right? So it
Mhm.
helps with resume. Recently, they added cover letters and they even do mock interviews on there. So I mean, I'm pretty sure there's other systems in
Of
play
course.
that kind of
Yeah.
are similar. What are your thoughts on those if it will answer that sort of question that
Yeah.
Adam has?
I'm looking it up now too. Yeah, and essentially, right, that is what Teal does, where I work as well. So again, it's one of those things where I could never come in and say like, "Don't do that." Obviously, I don't know VMock and how well it is, but it looks like every campus in the world's using it, so it must be, good for something. This person says it's not that great, honestly. Let me see. It's a very strict format for your resume. Any deviation in perfect form would give you an 80, 100. Okay, so yes, I will say that. One of these issues with like the scoring your resume stuff is that stuff is not perfect. And I do think, one of the moves we made at Teal recently is we started telling people like aim for 50% score. Um, Now, of course, it depends on like how each system works, but like, right, because a lot of what these AI systems do is they take every keyword, the stuff I talked about earlier that nobody's actually looking for at a job, right? Team player and hard worker and dedicated and things like that. And like, I promise you, I've never opened up a resume and done like Control F and searched for like dedicated. But a lot of these like AI systems include words like that. So I do think you need to sort of make sure you're focusing on the top keywords. So if your score, whatever system you're using, doesn't let you sort of like delete keywords to change the score, things like that, I wouldn't focus a ton on the score. But the idea of these is good, right? Because it does make sure that you are hitting in the key areas. Um, Mock interview tools, I think, are really good. This is something Teal has as well, right? We have put your job description, your resume in, and we can run like an AI interview where they'll, verbally ask you questions and you're on camera and answer and get feedback. And I do think things like that can be really helpful. I think practicing interviews is a really great tool. My biggest thing I'll say in general, right? The score is a great example, but like with all AI, it is imperfect, right? If you've done a Google search, You have no doubt seen AI answers come in that like aren't good or aren't the right answers. Um, so like you cannot just rely on it. You can't think it's just like the end all be all, but it is a tool that can aid you and sort of help you get started. But don't just like look to it as like almighty.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I know that kind of came full circle. That's how you mentioned earlier about this keyword stuff. I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean it's interesting seeing how it because there's a feature on there that lets you compare your resume to a job description, and then it'll give you another like a matching score, right? So
Mhm.
is there, I guess, like a number in terms of matching score that matters, or again, as it goes back to your point that as long as you construct those bullet points
Yeah.
matters.
That's what's hard because every system's it depends on how it's set up, right? So a teal we can say like aim for 50, but we also know we can say that based on like what our AI is doing when it comes to sort of keywords and what it's looking for. There's other systems out there. JobScan is one, and they'll tell you that if you don't have a 90%, don't apply. But they're also trying to sell you their services, like when they tell you that and run it through their system. Every system has a different way it assigns a score, so it's probably going to vary. But like ultimately go through a job description and understand like what are the real keys here, right? Again, so we talked about a Java developer, right? But what are like the must-haves? What are being repeated over and over again, versus what are the nice-haves? How do I demonstrate some of this stuff? Am I making it very clear? That's far more important. Is what I'd say is go through every bullet point on a description and say, do I have a bullet point or have I shown how I've done that thing? If the answer is yes, you're going to be lined up fine with it.
So, so in a sense, I guess take these services with a grain of salt at times.
Yeah. And that's with any tool you use, right? It's just kind of like it's not magic. It's just a tool to help.
Is that, yeah, I sometimes I say that, so it's just great to hear from a recruiter because sometimes
Yeah.
they might even saying the correct thing, right? So, but yeah, great. Well, we have about 20 minutes left, and as promised, I do want to open it up to the audience. Um, Dipanshi, are you brave enough to come off mute and ask your question, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, sure. Um, hey, so I guess the question was, there is AI being used, and I see like a few hundred and sometimes like 1,000 applicants by the time I apply to jobs online, and it's, just been like 2 or 3 days.
Hmm.
So is there a way to, I don't know if it's part of the ATS or how does one, eh, doesn't even make sense to apply at that point, or do you need to figure out a way to get your resume in earlier?
Yeah, it's hard. You know, uh, you're always best applying to a job as early as possible. The best time to apply to a job is within the first couple hours, or at least the first day of it opening. But the second best time is now, like when you see it. Because what I tell people is, if you don't apply, you have a 0% chance of getting the job. Like that's just like done. Um, here's the truth, and I've made content on this, and every time I do, people fight me. It makes people unhappy to hear. Um, I open jobs, I look at resumes and applications all the time. Uh, Most applicants are not qualified for the job they apply to. And I don't mean like, oh, it's pretty close and we just had too many applicants. I mean it's just like it's a bad application. The AI generated auto applying, business analyst applying for a developer, um, you know, uh, entry level marketing analyst applying for a vice president of marketing role because they're just like firing out as many applications. Like it's just like it's mostly not good because people are fed up and they're just shooting off resumes. And I always say that it's not the right way to do this. Um, so don't be intimidated by the number because whatever number you see, 70 to 80% of them probably are like out already and not getting interviews. Um, Now, as far as any individual job, I don't know. Maybe they got a perfect one right away. Maybe they're still waiting for a great one. Maybe the recruiter is still out there. Maybe they're collecting for a week before they start kind of going through and doing. Everyone's process is different. So I still say apply, um, you know, but um, don't work, take the time to send in a good application. That's just the more important part.
Thank you.
Adam, did you want to come off mute, or do you just want me to ask the question?
You can go ahead and ask it.
So Adam is asking, how much does my resume matter when I'm applying for an internal job posting? Would job performance matter more?
It's a good question. I mean, again, it's going to vary by company, but yeah, in general, job performance and like what your manager says about you and things are going to matter more. Um, But it probably depends on the company size, right? I work in a lot of startups and small companies, and everybody's going to kind of know you and your performance. But I mean, if you work at Amazon and you're applying for just like a totally different team and like another part of Amazon, most people who are sort of in that process and reviewing it probably have no idea who you are, don't know your manager, don't know your performance. So I don't want to say it's never going to matter. I think a lot is very company specific. But yeah, obviously, like to get an internal role or an internal performance, like you have to perform well within the company. But I would still take the resume part serious.
Does somebody want to come off mute and throw your question out there?
Can I ask?
Sure, go ahead.
Great. Hi, Mike. So based on kind of one of your last responses about like taking the time to send in a good application, how do I know I've like spent the right amount of time? Like I've put in enough effort and that I can send it in and maybe like move on to another application or whatnot. How do I determine that?
Yeah. I think it's doing sort of what I talked about, right? Going through this job description and asking yourself, like, am I showing these things? Um, you know, a job description is really a map to exactly what they're looking for in this job. And we can talk about like, well, job descriptions are terrible, they want too much, whatever else, like that's fine. But in reality, right, this is sort of what they're going off of when they look at resumes to begin with. Um, so, take the time and like ask yourself, am I qualified, right? Do I meet the must-haves for this job? If I'm not checking those must-have boxes, it's probably going to be a waste of my time, especially in this energy or in this job market. So have I shown that I meet those? Cool. Okay, how many of these nice to have things have I done? And have I shown those? Great. Have I made sure to highlight them? When we talk about like tailoring a resume for every job, if you're spending more than 10 to 15 minutes tailoring your resume, you're probably applying to the wrong job, right? It shouldn't take that much work because you should already sort of have shown most on your resume you're qualified for this job. But I would go through and I would say, okay, it's really obvious that this stuff's important. This stuff's really buried on my resume. I'm going to move it up to the top. I'm going to rewrite my headline a little bit to focus on the things that I know are key for this job. I'm just going to make sure, again, that time to value is really short, that they can find the most important stuff easily. And if you feel that it is, send the application in and move on and kind of go to the next one. Um, just ask yourself, like, have I done that? Am I doing these things?
Yeah. Can I ask a quick follow-up? If I feel like I'm needing that time for the resume, but with the cover letter, I'm like sort of lagging in it or just kind of freak out about how much I'm supposed to be writing or how
hmm
thoughtful it needs to be, how can I sort of cap that or constrain that as well?
Sure. Cover letters are a weird area. You know, my my general feeling with the cover letter is if you have a good template for yourself, you have a like your intro and your outro is sort of always going to be pretty similar, and you're just going to change that like little bit to have to do with this job, and then like that middle paragraph is probably going to be where you write a couple sentences that are specifically about like your alignment to the most important stuff for this job. Get that template together for yourself, and it should be a lot easier. Or again, when we talk about AI, let AI put it together for you, but then go through and highlight the things you actually want to highlight, make it sound like you, make it show off about you. Um, I think it can and kind of help there, but don't spend forever overthinking it. Just get it in. It's not, you know, spending trying to find that one little line, that one little thing, that one kind of flaw, whatever it is, that's probably not the difference maker at the end of the day. Right? You're qualified and you're showing it, or you're not. is ultimately kind of what this stuff comes down to.
Thank you.
Ahmad, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi Mike. So you mentioned that we should be applying to jobs within the first couple of hours. I was wondering like how I could like find job openings that just open because I always find them too late. And just to like
Yeah.
clarify my question a little bit more, are you aware of any like tools, AI or not, that I could use to like find these openings?
There probably are. What I'll say with like LinkedIn is you can set LinkedIn alerts to send to email you when jobs open with certain keywords or companies or things. So that's one way to go about it. And most job boards have that, right? Like tell me when similar jobs open. The other thing I'd say is like set a routine for yourself. When I was job searching, um, I would it'd be the kind of the first thing I did in the morning. What's come up, and then I would check in again, sort of like midday, and then maybe like the end of the day, right? And three times to go through my job boards and my places I looked for jobs. Because again, we're talking like within a few hours. We're not talking about having to be applicant one and get it the second that it posts. So give yourself that time to sort of just like be able to check consistently on that routine for yourself and you should see them as they come up. Some job boards are harder. LinkedIn is tough. It doesn't sort well, and all these sponsor posts sit up at the top and things like that. I'd find yourself some other places if you need to. But it's an exhaustive list that's out there. So regularly checking the same keywords and setting alerts for them to tell you is one way to do it. Other thing I'd say is like regularly check LinkedIn for people writing hiring posts. And this is something you can do, right? You can search on LinkedIn, like type into the search bar, hiring marketing manager, and then search and then sort by posts that people made and sort by within the last day or whatever it's going to be. And you'll find a lot of hiring managers who wrote a post. It's just like, I'm hiring a marketing manager at this company. Here's the link to it. That's another way to kind of like search each day as new people are posting things.
Yeah, I remember those days too. And I was waking up midday. Yeah, exactly. It took me back. I got a little bit of PTSD thinking about those days. But no, yeah, it's true. It does help when you have to be in the know of what's out there throughout the day or week, right? So yeah, I agree with that. John?
Hey there, Mike. So I for what's your advice for folks that, I'm doing a career change. I've been in federal government service for over like 20 years. When writing a resume, I've seen so much conflicting information about whether you're using a bullet form or a paragraph form, and then along with that, most of my resumes in government were like around 3 to 4
Mhm.
pages. Like, how short should they really be?
Yeah, this is where this goes back to some of the early stuff I said. One of the first things I said, right, that like about resume advice. You can ask 10 people for resume advice, and you get 10 different pieces of advice. This is a little side note, but I'm gonna answer this question, right? So I have a book on a lot of this stuff coming out in April. And the chapter about resumes, I literally start with this side note where I like right at the top, like I hate talking about resumes. I hate giving resume advice. Because you can ask 10 people, you get 10 different pieces of advice, and everything's conflicting. It's just people's opinions being passed off as rules. But my publisher said I have to have a chapter on resumes, so like here we go. Um, but that all said, like yes and no. Now, I will tell you, government resumes are different than most corporate resumes. So, yeah, government resumes, federal resumes are generally longer. It is a different beast as a whole. And there's a lot more paragraph format and things like that. I would say best practices, most corporate roles, it is bullet points versus a paragraph format right now. Think efficiency, think the like TikTok world that we live in now, right? It's just sort of like quick time to value again. I keep repeating that phrase. Um, People see long paragraphs of text and they don't read them. They don't read them when you text them. They don't read them when you email them. It happens on a resume too. So I would recommend bullet points as a whole. It's one of the things I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of debates, but I think bullet point is generally accepted better. Um, Pages, listen, most good resumes can be 1 to 2 pages. Um, I think most entry level, most college students, their resume should really be 1 page, just there's not enough experience to justify two. But my answer is sort of like whatever it takes to get the right information. Um, the most important stuff has to be at the top. Most people aren't going to read a whole resume, aren't going to read the whole way down. It's very unlikely that stuff that you're burying in the middle, on page 3 of a 4-page resume matters when it comes to like, do I want to interview this person to even begin with? So, you have to think about, does this bullet point work to get me an interview? Does this really speak to kind of what it needs? And if not, it can probably go. Old work experience, stuff that doesn't have to do with the job can probably go. If you're trying to transfer industries, just focus on what's transferable. What did I do with these roles that's similar to what I have to do in this role? And just highlight that stuff. Um, One of the things that's hard with trimming your own resume is we feel everything we've done is really important. We really struggle. And everyone I've ever worked with or coached or talked to about their resume, it's always just like, but I can't because of this or this is important. Everyone thinks everything they've ever done is like super important, but you need to think about if it's important to the person reading your resume and just trying to hire for one role. And I think most people can trim their resume shorter than they realize when they start kind of thinking through it that way.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's it's good to have something more definitive. Appreciate making time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm gonna actually throw one out there that I've been curious, and I don't know, since I mentioned that a lot of the master students are here for this particular workshop, and I actually had this student. So my question, and Jenna, I think if you're still here, you might be the last question. So be prepared to come off mute in a couple minutes. Um, so the question that I want to ask, and maybe this will give some insight for everybody who's in the job search. So do recruiters blacklist applicants who accept an initial offer and then decide they don't want to move forward because of another opportunity? So I've had students that are in between two offers. They're scared of saying no to one, and then the other one doesn't come through, right? So now they don't have those opportunities. So sometimes students say, I'll take one while I wait for the other one, and then is there a negativity to that?
So questions like this are always a little bit hard because one, of course, I can't speak universally for if anybody would ever do this. But what I'll tell you is blacklisting is not really like a common thing. It just, you know, this is part of it. Companies hire someone, people take jobs and they switch jobs. It's all part of it. And this has happened to me hundreds of times as a recruiter. Does it sting when it happens? Like, yeah, it sucks. Most recruiters, though, understand people are making the decision that like feels best for them. This is one of those things that's far more about the how than the what. Um, right. I have had people who take an offer and then come back to me with just like, hey, I finished up this other application or process as well. I didn't think an offer was coming through and I got the offer and it's the better spot for me. I'm really excited for it. My mind's made up. It's what I'm going to do. I'm just like, okay, like that sucks, but like, congrats. I'm happy, move on. And I've had people like take an offer and then just like not show up to work because they also took another offer and like didn't want to have that conversation with me. Um, if I had if I saw that person come through a second time to come back to a company, yeah, I probably wouldn't want to give them the opportunity. The first person, like, yeah, careers are long. This stuff happens. So yeah, focus on the how. It's an awkward conversation. Have it, be honest, make it clear your mind's made up and like that's what's going on. Be respectful of it. Treat people right. It's just like when you don't get a job, right? Like you remember the company that absolutely ghosted you, and you remember the company that was just like, hey, this sucks. Like I wish we could hire you, but we made a decision with this other candidate. Here's why we made it, and like we're gonna, like it works that way for everything.
Yeah, so just curious because sometimes, yeah, we've had students that are in between. They're like, I want to say yes just because I want to at least have a backup plan. And then you know.
Hmm.
So and they're kind of in the middle, like, what do I do? Am I gonna get blacklisted if I want to go back to that company, right? So just knowing that can maybe give some sense of, I guess, relief or accountability when they're moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, I remember everyone that's ever done it to me, right? But I don't like hold it against all of them every single time. And it's just kind of one of those things. And there's a billion companies out there, right? And if that recruiter decides like they're gonna like write you off because of it, like you'll be fine. You're not gonna cross paths with that person that many times the rest of your life, like if ever again. Things like that are like easy to stress over, but like ultimately, like you have to do what's right for you and your career and your family.
Exactly. So yeah, we are about to wrap up. So I wanted to give Jenna one last question. So if you want to ask your question.
Sure. Yeah, so I was wondering if recruiters utilize AI to find candidates more efficiently. I do recruiting for a company, and sometimes when they need people now, and it's hard to find people now on platforms like Indeed or on LinkedIn, right? So, what is the quickest way to find candidates, or that you've heard within the industry?
The quickest way, right? So this is one of those things where I'm just like, I don't know, AI is this thing that does it right. The quickest way that I find candidates right away is in my ATS system. You hear people say, right, like we'll keep you on file, and people are like, oh, nobody ever reaches out. Sometimes they do. Right. If I really need a developer quickly, I'm gonna look at people who we've like talked to about developer positions before. And then I'll do a little bit bigger search of what's out there. I'm gonna ask people in my network, of course, if they know anyone. Um, I don't think it's AI. It's more just sort of the tools that exist out there. But I will look on LinkedIn too, because I can pull up a search on LinkedIn right now of people actively looking, unemployed, ready to start, who find that skill set, and I'm going to reach out to them as well. I mean, that's how we're finding people quickly, is people already in our system and people who have like put it out there. This is why, when people talk about should you mark your open to work on LinkedIn or whatever, like, and I say yes, it's because if I need someone, that's where my search starts. Is the people who are there, like, yeah, I need this job.
That's helpful. Thank you so much for sharing.
So, well, yeah. So I mean, I think we're right on time, and Mike is in Chicago, so I know he's giving us part of his day. So I don't want to hold him up too long. But did everybody find this useful? The information, was this a good conversation? I learned a lot today. And I'm thankful for y'all for participating and making it worth its time, right? So I want to thank you, Mike, for being here today, giving us this insight. Sometimes it's hard to come across what's right in a sense, right? How to decipher some of that misinformation, and how can students better prepare themselves as they graduate and or look for other opportunities, right? So thank you for being here today and giving us that time.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, feel free to find me on, whatever social media and kind of reach out or kind of questions you can come up with. And, I'm happy to talk to people about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so as some of you were late, if you scan the QR code, there's a picture of Mike. Here's his LinkedIn code. Follow him, follow all his great content, very informative. But yeah, other than that, thank you for being here, and I will be in touch with maybe a survey after. But thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a good day.
Bye, everyone.